Let's just start recording this. Okay, hey you guys, welcome to the Zoom analysis. The reason why I'm doing this so early on is because I'm not sure how my weekend is going to run, so I don't know if I'll be available to do any Zoom sessions. At the point of hey guys, welcome. Um, let's start immediately, right? So the reason why I'm doing this so early on is because I'm not sure how my weekend will run. And I know some of you guys are really interested in, getting into these Zoom calls and just um seeing how I relate to the chats and stuff like that. Right. So I'm not gonna take up too much of your time. I'm gonna try to get this done quickly and as concise as possible. So I just want to start over with this week, what we had happening, some of the major news that happened, and the price action that we saw related to those news, right? So obviously the things that were in main focus at this point of time was the interest rates that we had for both the US. So we had the US interest rate coming out at the consensus, which is 3.25%. We also had CHF and GBP interest rate as well. Right. And you can see the consensus for all of these were the same as the actual, right? Even though we were expecting, well, most of the large hedge fund owners and the people that do move the markets, right? We were expecting an increase of like a 100 basis point, right? But we didn't have that happening. And that is what relates the moves that we saw initially at the time of those news release, right? So we saw that price action, even though the interest rates did go up, which is good for a currency, right? We did saw a sort of a reversal, a negative movement when we did have those that news data come out, right? So you can see it here being more drastically so on the CHF. So right around here when that news did get released around 3 a.m. You can just see that that was around the same time, right? So 3:30 a.m. We did see this large drastic move to the opposite side that we would, usually we'll usually expect to get, right? And this is because markets had already priced in a 100 basis point movement, right? And seeing that we only got that 75 basis point increase or whatever the case may be, right? We saw that price action reversal, right? So it's like saying, okay, we already expected, right, from the previous news interest rates that we had for the Fed, right? We were expecting that 100 point increase, right? So markets ran with that information beforehand, and this is where we will talk about market expectancy versus reality, right? And that's something that I teach as well. So the expectancy was to see that price increase, and we ran with that initial movement, and that's where we saw price on the starting of the week. We had a strong USD, right? Or a stronger dollar, right? And we saw that strength continuing on to the actual release. Now, when we saw that release come out and we saw that, okay, now what we expected didn't happen, right? Now is the reality time. Reality takes in check and price shows that sort of reversal, right? And that is what we had for the US dollar. We also had for the GBP and the CHF, as you can see here, for the Swiss, right? That be more of a drastic move here for the Swiss, and I'll just get into that just now. But like just to show you comparison, the AUD CHF, 80 USD. This was it, I believe, right here. Web price pulled back, and this is I think a 100 pip move or something like that, right? Okay, like 75, 80 pips move, right? So price initially came down, and it just went back up. Yeah, question. Tuesday night. Officers tell us there was no Somebody have a question? And the suspect before the shots were fired. The police vehicle, which was okay. I'm just gonna mute everybody here. Right? If you have a question, feel free to ask so in the chat or unmute yourself, right? I just don't want to, have any too much background noise or anything like that during the recording. All right. But yeah, initially we saw price spike down into the initial zone or direction that we want to see, right? But because again we didn't get that surprise or the expectancy that we wanted, price pulled back. Okay, and this is where we saw that pullback here. Now, mind you, for the USD is a little bit different because we also had in the next half hour after the news release, we also had the Fed conference where Jerome Powell would have spoken and he would have put in his 2 cents about where the Fed stands and talk about inflation and other the stance, the more hawkish stance or whatever it is that the Fed is doing right now. And that also influenced price. So that's why we saw this correction almost immediately on the next candle, and then that sort of continuation downwards, right? So that was the move for the US dollar, right? For most of those USD pairs, that was the same thing that happened, right? On the next candle after the interest rate candle, when Jerome Powell spoke, it gave more of a reassurance on the overall hawkishness of the Fed, right? And we saw that continuation for the US dollar strength, right? So the market took that information, was very pleased with it, and we saw the USD continuing moving onwards, right? And we also had some very clean market structure as well, as you can see here, right? This being one, if we look at the 4 hour, we can see that this was an area, a zone, right? We saw that price push through that zone on the news release. We had that sort of a retest of the rejection. And as you can see, we had another rejection right here. So there was more of an expectancy to see price continuing moving lower, especially since we did get that increase on interest rates, right? So this was something that would have been a really nice trade to get into. I think everybody should have, see that as a potential trade and profit out of that. Now, considering the CHF, right? This move is very overly exaggerated. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. One being that we also expected to see that increase, right? We ran with that information beforehand. We saw that price started breaking levels. We had a clear trend going to the downside. Now, when it did come out, right, we saw that, and this is one of the things that separates the franc, the Swiss currency from the others. We have negative interest rates, right? So from the previous, we was at negative 0.75%, right? We had an increase, so we reached the negative 0.25, and now we had another increase again of that 75 basis points, right? So now we're in a positive interest rate area, right? Which is something that the Swiss hasn't done for like a good while now, right? I can't give you the exact date, but it's been a good while now since the Swiss has been using negative rates. And to see that we're now coming out of that area just shows it highlights how problematic inflation is, right? For not just the Swiss, but overall for the general global economy. So we had this drastic move to the upside just because we didn't price in at what we expected, right? And you can at this point you could rationalize whatever it was that continued this move so further up. Maybe it's because okay, we had that initial reversal, didn't meet expectancy, more people jumped in, and it caused price to push up overall, right? On the fundamental side, we did still come out of those negative interest rates, right? So that's a big thing for the Swiss. So overall, we could expect to see that coming back down, right? We could rationalize that, okay, at this point, the Swiss bank very heavily bullish on their stance, hawkish, or whatever you want to say, right? On doing what they need to do in order to curb inflation. So even though we did have this reversal right here, this is not a signal to buy, right? Or at least it was not a signal to buy for me, or that we should enter this to see, a possible setup to continue further on if it's a reversal pattern or anything like that, right? Looking at the overall the overall view, right? We could see that, okay, we did come back into this zone right here, sort of, right? Close enough to that zone. We get a retest if you want to be more, just rationalize it a little better, right? We got a retest right here. At this point, we saw some rejections. Again, we're just looking for an area where price probably starts pulling back from, right? So if you're somebody that trade with candle patterns or those are the type of entries that you look for, you can rationalize that right here. We had a bearish engulfing candle right after the first initial move to the upside, the swings to the upside, right? And now we could possibly see a continuation, especially since we came in back into this zone right here, right? This was a zone that was previously broken. We had a strong break to the downside. So this was a continuation lower, especially since we rationalized that the fundamentals are in play to more on the side of the Swiss itself, right? So this was a trade that we took in VIP, worked out pretty well, and NZD CHF as well. Both being the same thing, rationalized as the same thing, right? So yeah, that's some of the stuff that happened. The GBP was like the same thing as well, right? Initially, price spike to the upside. It was like right around here. Um, we took this trade, closed it out into profits, and then price continued to the downside, right? And this is just because of overall this have different fundamentals at play for it. But in terms of the overall market direction, why the GDP then move up as like with the rest of the peers or whatever, is because there's more of a weaker sentiment when it comes to the pound itself. All right. And we might probably get into that in at a later time. But for now, I don't want to bombard you guys with too much information, right? So looking into this week, the upcoming week, what we have on the docket for the calendar, we do have a lot of speeches, right, from different Fed representatives. In terms of things that we should pay majorly attention to, I would say all the high impactful stuff. I don't look at durable goods, but like the speech that we have here from the ECB, we also have BOJ monetary policy meetings, meeting minutes, sorry. This is also would be a very impactful news event, I think, as well, especially since we did have the Japanese central bank buying the yen, right? So we did have that happening, which caused some turnover into the markets, right? Which was a first. They haven't done that since 1998 or something like that. So these are things that will be more in highlight for the upcoming week, right? And we have pending goods, pending home sales and stuff like that. That's not really important if you ask me. We also have, again, a lot of speech, as you can see here. And the only other thing that I would say is important to pay attention to is probably jobless claims and continuing jobless claims, right? And that's basically what we have. All these other things here, like the retail sales for German area and stuff like that, not too important, just because it highlights one area within the Eurozone. But yeah, I wouldn't say this is too would play too much into the overall movement of the euro dollar, right? Unless we do see some sort of big catalyst or something like that. CPI data, this is also important as well. We could possibly see what we have here, right? We have the consensus being higher than the previous, right? So we could see a possible bullish movement for the euro on this upcoming news event. And that's basically it. So we don't have too much, but at the same time, we have a lot, right? We have a lot of speeches coming up, and we only have like one or two in terms of CPI data and the jobless claims to pay attention to, right? So these are what would be the main focus of next week, right? Moving with the overall fundamentals that we do have in play right now in terms of the overall market sentiment, market direction. I would say the best possible trade to get yourself involved into, just to avoid unnecessary like stop outs or um instead of overextending yourself, would be the CHF, because again, this is something that's been we in positive rates, right? So interest rates has gone positive, which is big. So this I would say has a lot more potential to play out, a lot cleaner than if you're just doing something like the GBP or maybe the euro right now until after you get those news events, those speeches. and then you could build a clearer direction as to what to expect from the euro or the GBP, right? So I'm gonna just erase this. I remove that. Anybody have any questions? Everybody following along? If you're following along, you understand thus far, you can type in the chat. If you have a question, you can also type in the chat, unmute yourself, anything like that. I'll just give you a few seconds, so indicate that you understand thus far, and all of that. And I'm doing this, make sure you guys understand, you get a little feel of how I view the markets, what it is that I look for, and maybe it might build your understanding about market sentiment, overall market psychology, and stuff like that. Right? So everybody understand thus far? We'll take that as a yes. All right. Okay. So moving into this week, right? Let's just start with the daily analysis. Move down. All right. Let's see what we have. Okay, so again, looking more mainly for CHF buys. Highlighting this area right here, right? So this was the low, the most recent lows right here. If you're looking at the daily level, that price has approached. We did push past that level, but you can see that we wicked, right? And this is sort of a level that's being maintained. Again, so the fundamentals are in play more on the side of the CHF, right? So we are more bullish on the CHF. At this point, I would say wait to see if price actually passes this area, right? So if you get a close below this zone, maybe below this area right here where price width from, right? We could see a continuation to the downside. Now we don't have anything to the left really to pay attention to mark as a potential area to get out, or where we might experience some pullbacks or anything like that, right? Unless it go all the way to the weekly or something like that. I don't do this. So it's not something I would note. But keeping it relatively, within expectations, I would say once price does pass this area, let's go to the 1 hour here. Once price does pass this area, we could see a correction down to the initial move right here, right? And if we're going to continue lower, I'll keep it with an expectancy to see about a 1 to 4, a 1 to 3 risk to reward, right? So this is something that I'd say will actually, be more within expectations, right? So if we got a continuation lower, we come back into this area right here where price made the initial push upwards. I would say that, a continuation lower will be nice, right? So once we do get a break to the downside, I think that would be like have more of a potential to see a continuation gain. And this would be something that I would potentially get into if price does push all the way back to this initial move. All right. And seeing that next week we don't really have anything on the docket for the AED, I'd say it should be a more laxed market environment to involve yourself in, right? You shouldn't get too much of wick pullbacks or anything like that that you may see for the euro and the USD and the GBP. So yeah, this is what I would be looking at mainly, right? And this is something that you should note as well, guys, right? You don't need to take every trade. Each week you could aim for maybe a 2.5% return. If you could do higher, then that's great. But don't ever feel like you need to push yourself to make a certain amount every month or every week or anything like that. That is the point where you'll drive yourself insane. And by putting expectations on yourself like that, especially when it comes to trading, again, the markets is something that's very unpredictable. We could try to rationalize it, but we wouldn't always be right. There will be times that we would be wrong, and there would be times that we may try to rationalize it, and try to see things that aren't there or that don't fit our trading plan. So you need to be aware of that and be aware of yourself and your own psychology, because it's very easy to fall in that mindset, right? If you're a funded trader, right? Or if you're somebody that's trading and you're trying to make trading a full-time thing, it's very easy to get yourself in that sort of mindset that you need to make this amount by this point of time and stuff like that, right? And that would lead you into making careless mistakes, such as entering trades, like div setups that don't necessarily. It may look like a good div setup, but you lack the fundamentals, right? Or you didn't pay attention to the fundamentals. So it took like, let's say for example, right? Let's say like this was 80 USD, right? You see a diff setup, you're like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna get involved in this, right? But for whatever reason, price continued even lower and it pushed past your stop loss. Why? Because you neglected the fundamentals and neglected to see that the USD is the stronger currency right now. So it would have, or it would have been more of a probability to see price, continue pushing downwards, right? And that is something neglected because you're looking to make X amount of money in X amount of time, right? So I want you guys to take that information, right, and keep it in the back of your mind, or maybe write it out on a piece of paper or a sticky note and just label it at the start of your trade start. Don't ever feel like you need to make, or it's a necessity that you need to make X amount of money in X amount of time, right? Because as a trader, what you want to do, and especially if you're funded, your overall or your primary goal is to keep that funded account, right? If it's something that you can scale, then you scale it. But your primary goal should be to keep that funded account, right? You make a profits and you keep that funded account. A lot of funded traders don't make it past 3 months, right? Or may even past their first payout when they are funded, right? Just because they fall into that mindset that they need to make more and more money each month, right? So yes, a little tidbit to you guys. Those of you that are looking to get funded, or those of you that who are funded already, right? Because these were moves that could have taken out a lot of people. Um, 80 JPY, right? I'll explain this a little bit. This initial move to the downside, right? This was because we had BOJ saying, all right, we don't like where the yen is right now, so we gotta stop buying your own currency. And that is what happened. So this shaked up the market a little bit. We saw that the yen gained a lot of strength actually. And this move was 200 and like 300, right? Around enough to like 300 pips, right? And we had, I think it was CHF JPY. Yeah, this was like 700 and something pips, right? So like, wow, you see that? Wow, 740 pips. A 740 pip move in just a few hours. You know how wild that is, guys? What, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like in 6 hours, 700 and something pips just got taken in the markets, right? Among them, there are a lot of people who are probably got with maybe there'll be a lot of people that probably made a lot of money on this move. But again, this was because we had BOJ just basically being like, all right, we don't like what the currency is at right now. We have to do something. They start buying their own currency, something that they haven't done since 1998, right? And this just shows to highlights the issue that we're currently facing in terms of where all the central banks are at right now. We have a lot of negative movement in the markets, right? A lot of bearishness and overall just inflation being the main issue, the main drivers to this wild price action, right? Going into this upcoming week, what we could possibly do, right? If we do see the BOJ continue buying, that would be very strong for the yen itself. I am more bearish on the AUD right now. So in terms of like expectancy, and what I'll be doing if I do look to get a trade, I would only be trading AUD JPY if I do look to get into JPY pair, because this seems like the less volatile, the more predictable pair cross pair to move it. Right. So we could possibly see uh we could possibly see a reversal or continuation back up into these levels right here. Right. And I'll just highlight these levels because one, this is where we initially pushed past, right? As we were continuing into this sort of a, we could say it was already in sort of a downtrend right here, right? So we could say that price was continuing down from here, right? And at this point, highlight this. This would have been an area possible as well, right? So we could get a retest right here of this low if we go in with a continuation to the downside, right? Price may even come back even into this level right here, right? We don't know. But at this point, I would say if price pulls back and we come into this point, I'll be looking to sell. If price pushes past this area and we come back into this area right here, I'll be looking to sell, right? So these are the two possible areas we could sell from here, or even if price pulls back higher here, right? And these are being more conservative. Price could come all the way back right here into this zone right here, because this is an area that we could highlight. Price rejected from right into that area right here and continued pulling down, right? So we could get a retest right at that area. Maybe we might start even we might even be at the starting of a range or something like that. We don't know. But when price does pull back up, we could look at these possible areas for entries, right? 1, 2, and 3, right? So this is something that also has a lot of potential to play out in next week. We do have some, I think we do have some, yeah, we have some yen news, right? So we have inflation rate, sorry, no, this is the wrong one. Yeah, right, so we had a speech. We have Monday at 2:30 a.m. and 1:30. We have some yen speech from some representatives of the central bank. If we look in, it's just then. We also have unemployment rate as well, and we have consumer confidence. This is something else they should pay attention to, right? Consumer confidence carries a lot of weight as well into the markets, right? So we do have some things coming out for the yen that we could potentially see price react with, right? But overall, yeah, looking for the pullbacks. If you want to be that person, that guy that gets into trades for pullbacks, right? Say looking for you probably enter, let's say at the starting of the starting of the trading week. You can do that. I'm not against this at all. It's something that I do myself as well sometimes. But right now, with how the market environment is, I would say I'll be more skeptical about it, right? It does have a lot of potential to actually play out. I see nothing wrong with it at all, right? But I'll just say be more conservative, right? If you're gonna do this, then enter with maybe half of the usual risk that you would take, right? Just as a just in case, because we have been seeing that price, may continue moving on downwards, mightn't respect this level right here, this lower support level, right? So that's just something to take into consideration. 80 USD. This was a trade I got into as well. I did not send this in a Discord group because it was like 2 a.m. or something, right? Yeah, it was like 2 in the morning or something like that. Nobody be up at that time. But yeah, this was a trade also taken. As you can see, continuing to the downside, the USD being the more stronger currency, the currency within in everybody's view right now. So looking at it daily, we can see that we had passed a significant level right here. Sorry, we almost all the time. We passed a significant level right here. We had multiple retests. Right, we saw price come strongly to the downside here, came to that zone, rejected, and that continuation move happening, right? So this is what's right around. Sorry. Right. So this is what I'm looking at right now. All right. So this is where we're at right now. Right. So we saw that price came. We've retested this area multiple times, and this would have been the low to pay attention to, right? The most recent low on the daily, right? And then we saw price continuing moving downwards as we saw that more US dollar bullishness, right? So at this point, when we did come and we got that retest right around here, and I believe that would have been right around the interest rate decision, right? Could have possible get into a short to continue moving further down, especially after we saw this correction bearish candle when we had Jerome Powell speak it, right? We retested that area as we pulled down, we came back up, retested, and these rejections would have been like the best possible time to see that continuation moving downwards. Looking into this week upcoming, if we have a retest somewhere right around here, that would be great. The price comes back into this area, we pull back a little bit, and we come right into here. We could possibly see a continuation moving further down, right? But this is something I'm not too hasty to get into, right? The US dollar has been known to do some weird stuff, especially depending on how the DXY moves. It could affect, well, usually it does affect the price movement on the other USD cross pairs. Also, the AD and the NZD do have sort of different movements compared to the other USD cross pairs as well, like the GBP and the Euro, right? Maybe this is because they have risk on currency. So when you compare the two, you'll see more of a selling from the AD side, right? Or as investors pull out and the economy just doesn't look like a risk on kind of doesn't have that risk on sentiment, right? We might see these more of a extremely exaggerated move to the downside, right? Or more of a very uniform move, right? So I would say it's slightly easier for us USD crossfire to get involved into, but at the same time, the US dollar does do some weird stuff, right? So it's something that I'm not too keen on particularly getting into at the starting of the week or anything like that. If we do reach into this area, I have to see multiple rejections before I actually take a sell to the downside, just because I'm not looking to lose anything on USD weirdness, right? We could possibly even pull back even more, right? So we could pull back from this area and even come back all the way up here before price continue even lower, right? So this is something that has, there's a probability for this to happen as well, right? So yeah. As you can see, I'm mainly focused on the ADPs, right? Just because they're more at this point in time, I believe they're easier to read compared to when you're looking at the all right, got JPY. What's that comparison? Clean movement. Got JPY, not so much, right? The CHF JPY, same thing. Cleaner movement on the AD JPY. And I think that explains it, right? A lot of them is the same thing. The GPJPY, yeah, you could kind of rationalize that this is clean movements as well. But in terms of like areas to possibly get yourself involved into, it's not, it's more like a continuation move to the downside. So if we're looking for our first retest on an area that we couldn't get involved in, then this would be the area of retest right here. Sorry for the noise in the background. And this also here will be like the area of retest right here, right? But again, in terms of like the overall movement that we've seen thus far, AD JPY, that's like the best one. NZD JPY, same thing. USD JPY, this is a mess. Why would I get involved in this? You guys see this mark? You guys see these candles, right? So that's something that you need to pay attention to as well, right? I like to look at these pairs in terms of whatever cross pairs I do get involved in. I'll make a note of the fundamentals for each currency, right? So what is the JPY doing? What is the AD economy doing? Is their sentiment more bullish? Is it more bearish compared to the other cross pair that I am looking at? Thus, this has a lot more potential to see a movement in one direction, right? So if the AD is bearish and the JPY is bullish, when we get a retest here, I know for a fact, or at least I know with a higher certain probability that price is going to continue playing to the downside, right? Even though we get that sort of a reversal or that retest, right? Just because price pulls back up right here, or we see that it pulls back even further, doesn't mean that this is the point at where we should start buying the AED, right? Because overall, we already have our fundamental data. We already have our bias for each economy currency, right? So when we get that pullback, or when we see on the charts that we see, okay, on the technicals, price reversing, price pulling back a little bit, we know that this is just an area for the market, for the movers of the market to get into at a better discounted price to see a continuation to whatever direction they're looking at, right? Um, the ADCHF, right? Same thing basically. I just find the price action a little bit more cleaner, especially we get a move to the downside, continuing from here, all right? AD card, I I never traded the AD card in a good while, right? But if I was looking at it, compared to the other card pairs, I would say this even this is more cleaner than the others. Let's look at the Euro card, right? Um, you could argue that yeah, this is also going down right now. We do have some kind of clearish levels, but those pullbacks just be the death of you, right? Chibi card again, more lax GBP, right? So we saw that price just continue pulling down on this, right? If we're looking for a retest, I would say, yeah, wait until price comes all the way right here, or maybe even come into these areas right here, right? So this is something that you could also get yourself involved in, probably, right? NCD card, same sort of price action, more cleaner though, right? So yeah, that's it. Anybody have any questions? Feel free to reach out to me on the Discord if you have my personal information as well. WhatsApp me, can message me on Telegram, Instagram as well. I'm basically on all social media platform. Um, but hopefully you guys found this informative. As you know what I'm looking at for this week. As the week continues, things might change. You might get, more clearer market movement from the other currency pairs as well. But in terms of what we already saw happening and seeing that what we have from next week is just a lot of speeches and stuff like that, right? These look like the more certain things that we could get involved into. The ADJPY, ADCHF, this little bad boy here, ADUSD. So yeah, that's it. As things continue, we might see more, market, we might see things improve more, better price action and stuff like that. But for thus far, those are the only things that I'm paying attention to, right? Those three, basically. Right. So hopefully you guys found this informative. Always, usually we do this on Sundays. Again, I told you guys, I'm not sure how my weekend is looking. So that's why I said I'll just do it now and get it over with, help you guys out, and that'll be it. But usually this will just be on Sundays, market open. So yeah, you guys feel free to join that as well. If we do have any, if I am available Sunday, we'll go over the charts and stuff again. But yeah, and Monday also at 5 p.m. we'll be doing Zoom calls as well. And Wednesdays, tell your friends, your family, whoever, other traders that you know, we'll be doing live sessions on YouTube on Wednesdays at around 9 a.m., sorry, till around 11 a.m., right? So like 2 hours of live sessions, just looking at the markets and overall what we see happening thus far for the week and continuing on, right? So thank you for joining, guys. Have a great weekend and take a little kick back from the training. And yeah, just enjoy yourself, recuperate, recover, and yeah, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, peace.